Okay, welcome everybody. We're creating content again for the DECT Forum magazine, DECT Today, and for the DECT Forum YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about DECT NR Plus today, about IoT, IIoT, and much more. Often in these discussions, it's just me talking with one interviewee, but we've got a bit of a panel today, a roundtable discussion with representatives from Nordic Semiconductor, Wirepas and Schneider Electric. Gents, would each of you briefly, perhaps kicking off with Christian, tell us your name, who you work for and what you do?
Yeah, thanks Vince. Yeah, I'm Christian Sæther. I'm a product director in Nordic's long-range business unit. So my product ownership is long-range radio technology, chipset and solutions covering cellular, non-terrestrial and NR+, of course, and other long-range radio technologies. Based in Trondheim in Norway.
Thank you. Youssef.
Hi, very pleased to meet you all. Youssef Kamel, I'm heading the business for buildings and trackings at Wirepas. Wirepas is a Finnish company specialized in wireless technology, and we are deploying very large-scale mesh systems in a B2B IoT market. So that encompasses smart metering, smart buildings, and smart tracking.
Thank you. And Ben?
Hi everyone. My name is Ben. I work for Schneider Electric as a wireless architect, focusing on 5G technologies, including DECT NR+.
Thanks. Okay, let's get straight into this. What is the current state of DECT NR+? We've been working together for quite some time now. Each of us individually knows bits about what's going on, but in your words, what's happening with the hardware, the software, testing and certification? And are there already any customer implementations? Again, Christian, do you want to kick that off?
I can do that. So on a high level, NR+ is still a fairly new radio standard in the sense that establishing a new radio standard that definitely has some complexity, takes time.
It does.
But we have today very mature hardware that's been in production for years already that support the standard. We have a mature physical layer and stack that's been kind of product and professional available for probably almost 2 years now. So that's getting very mature. If I then go to customers, we have a few customers that are coming into production this year. So that means they have spent 12 to 19 months, right, to build their first modules or first devices that typically do. And those are customers in industrial market that need something that is low latency and really for critical systems. We are working very close with Wirepas, obviously, on massive mesh with their commercial 5G mesh solution. And we also have customer in audio and smart buildings coming up now. So this is in different markets.
Well, Christian links us nicely across to Wirepas. Youssef, do you want to give us your viewpoint on this?
Yeah, with pleasure. And thanks, Christian. I think the most important here is to understand the level of maturity of the technology as a whole. Yes. Then, of course, there's also the maturity of the customers, right? So I think as Christian stated it perfectly, the radio PHY is not something that has been totally reinvented. It is using hardware that is deployed in millions or billions of devices, which is basically a derivative of the LTE PHY. And we are keeping really the same structure of mesh software as we are deploying in smart metering, smart building, smart tracking, and many other applications. So the technology is not only proven, but deployed in millions of devices. And we're reusing exactly the same backbone here.
Okay, and Ben, what's your view?
Yeah, so I will take the certification part of the question because that's my roles within the DECT Forum. So there's a lot of collaboration between all of the parties in the interest group, the different companies from manufacturers to silicon and stack vendors, which is great. We're progressing quite well with definitions and how exactly the certification program is going to look. We are really, really close to having the conformance documents published through ETSI, which is going to unlock a lot of momentum in the certification group. It means that we can really start building up the way that the tests and the certification program needs to run. So we are we are moving at a good pace, but it's about to get a lot faster.
Fantastic. Well, IoT is a
maybe just one point to add, Vince,
yes,
here
of course, go ahead.
On the interoperability and certification. As Ben stated, of course, you cannot make a standard without having it certified. And I think the scope of the certification, the scope of the technology is very important, which means that we are not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Mm-hmm. We're trying to make the technology certifiable at the right level, which means the communication level, and then make sure that the technology plugs in as nicely as possible using standards inside CSA Matter or inside KNX or inside other frameworks. So I think we are defining it as a plug-in technology into available, popular, mature frameworks.
Okay. Well, IoT is a very large topic across many different markets. We've been looking quite in a quite focused way at the building automation market. Guys, can you describe the IoT market in buildings in terms of where it is today and how you believe it will be in the next sort of 3 to 5 years? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, maybe I can start a bit on how I see it, which I'm not a kind of building expert as such, but from a chipset vendor point of view, what I see from Nordic is that building automation is really now coming along in two different ways. You have kind of professional buildings, which today are built up of typically very private, discrete solutions that are not interoperable. There are different solutions out there, and it's really not scaling because every vendor tends to build their own solution and nothing is interoperable. So as you build a building or redo a building, you have to select a system and you're stuck with that system forever. While in the consumer space, you don't need the same radio capacity, you don't need the same quality and things like that. And typically it's on the 2.4 gigahertz in consumer product, and that's happening at a much quicker space, but at a more kind of simpler solutions where consumers go out and buy their stuff and try to make their own houses smart. So those are the things where in the consumer space, things are 2.4 gigahertz. We see Matter coming in over Bluetooth. Things are happening. And on the industrial side, the more professional sides, you're stuck in the old world of non-interoperability, and we really need something have to change.
Yeah, I imagine, Ben, you've probably got some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think you summarized it, Christian, really well, right? The market for large buildings is really segmented. Often product lines from the same vendor require individual networks. And let's not even get started if we're trying to cross vendors inside of a building. This drives up complexity and cost, and it's something that needs to evolve, right? It's not something that should evolve, it needs to evolve. I think this will happen first at network layer, right? The network layer interoperability, which is really what NR Plus is addressing here. This can allow for an individual building IoT network with product lines and vendors operating across the one network. And potentially, it can unlock some opportunities around application layer interoperability, but I don't think NR Plus is going to be the single thing to drive this, right? There's a lot of other things that need to come into play, but the opportunity will be there.
Well, it's a very complicated market, and let's look at the technology for a minute. We're presumably coming from an IoT market that's today still largely based on wired solutions and going into a market of wireless solutions. There are quite a few different wireless technologies for IoT. I mean, there's LoRa, there's Matter, there's Z-Wave, there's Thread, just to name a few. Can you give us some ideas why DECT NR Plus is such a suitable technology for use in building IoT?
Maybe I can take this one, Vince.
Please do yourself, yeah.
Just to start, I think the most important element that we need to keep in mind is that 75% of the buildings that are available today are not efficient in terms of energy, right? And actually, a very large proportion of the buildings that we need to monitor are already existing, right? Which means that, of course, if you build a new building, you can make it very energy efficient. But for existing buildings, you have to place very large amount of sensors. And because this is a refurbish operation, you need those sensors to be wireless, right?
Yes.
So wireless is very important. And unfortunately, as we discussed today, there is no such a suitable wireless connectivity to cover large-scale buildings and to cover a multitude of use cases, because you have issues with interference and reliability if you are using 2.4 gigahertz. You have issues of range and coverage if you are using short range, and you have issues with throughput if you are using the wrong technology in sub-gigahertz, right? So I think the great thing about NR Plus is that it is combining range, coverage, throughput, the right level of latency, and power consumption. So it is really the moment in time where there is a need for a new wireless technology, and there is NR Plus, which is bringing or closing this gap.
Well, in addition to the core RF technology, are there other factors that make NR Plus an important and potentially successful technology in building IoT?
Yeah, I also think that one thing that we see increasing focus, also coming back, traveling around in Europe this week, is cybersecurity and the Cyber Resilience Act in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a cybersecurity expert myself, but you see the requirement for the devices to be able to manage threats and have firmware update support for secure firmware update for 5 years.
Yep.
So obviously there are limitations in certain radio standards today that how do you do secure firmware updates over the next 5 years? As Joseph said, you need bandwidth. Maybe you want to run IP, a standardized protocol with high security to cover these kind of things. I think the need for something that's robust, that have long range and is reliable. You now have this Cyber Resilience Act in Europe coming in on the other side, setting really requirements to those devices in terms of, I think I heard today that an average IoT device today lives actually for 8 years, which is much longer than most people think. And then and if you need to support firmware updates, security updates, device management, onboarding, offboarding of those devices for years, I think it will put requirements on the capacity of the networks and using standardized connectivity in a level that we have never seen before, actually.
Well, the IoT market's been addressed by many different industry alliances, including all of those for the technologies I mentioned a moment ago. There's a big job here for the DECT Forum. What do we need to do to ensure a place for NR Plus in this super competitive marketplace where interested parties are being drawn in many different directions?
I think one really important thing about NR Plus is that it is really application layer agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these technologies, protocols that are running inside of the building that are sitting on top of the network, they are there and they can be implemented on top of NR Plus without too much, right? Because NR Plus is agnostic to it. So we need to create the contacts within these different alliances to ensure that we continue to work with them and continue to be compatible with these types of protocols. But for me, this is one of the big draws.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you can stay agnostic to the application itself and build something that can work with different application layers on top, I think that enables not necessarily competition between all these alliances, but enable that we provide a radio and a stack that basically has a set of services and APIs to run Matter or KNX or whatever it is on top.
Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely. So I think that we are at a stage right now where the implementation is no longer a question. So the implementation is available. I think the work that we need to do is really about creating the adoption. And this is, of course, facilitated by the fact NR Plus is a global standard. It's available basically in all continents. And I think the second element, as Ben was mentioning, is the fact that we know that interoperability is not only a radio layer question, it also has to include services like over-the-air update, provisioning, security, and all these elements that make the system actually deployable by everyone.
Do we think that one technology can dominate this marketplace and become the de facto standard, or will IoT and building automation continue to be serviced by many different technology solutions?
I think if I start here, maybe the way that I see it is that NR Plus can enable other technologies which NR Plus cannot address. Like if you take, for example, energy harvesting is not yet, at least, a use case that is fit for NR Plus. But what NR Plus can enable is the transmission of that data retrieved via energy harvesting across an entire building. And so this is where I really see the fit for NR Plus, where it can address a lot of the use cases that we have inside of a building. But yes, there's no one wireless technology for everything. So really, it becomes an enabler.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard to foresee that you will have a very, single wireless technologies, especially if you look outside of the consumer, where you have so many different requirements. It's not only buildings, but buildings talk to other buildings or to meters, and they are bridging into industrial use cases and these kind of things. And it's also, I think it's really about these technologies. They need to become enabler for different use cases, as Ben said, or be able to run maybe protocols at a protocol level, such as Matter, will help to drive standardization on protocol level, not necessarily on radio level, which still will be dependent on use cases.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Christian. I think the main question is, what is the main backbone of the connectivity for a certain class of IoT use cases, right? Of course, if you want to transmit camera data and video streams, and sometimes you have to do that in security subsystems, well, then you need probably a dedicated high-speed wireless technology. But of course, for the very large majority of the IoT use cases that you find, so lighting, emergency lighting, heating, HVAC, anything to do with sensing, of course, NR Plus has a very good chance of occupying those use cases.
Okay, well, for quite a long time now, 10 or 15 years, the potential size of the IoT marketplace has been estimated at tens or even hundreds of billions of devices, but it seems to be taking a long time to get there. How long do you guys think it will take until volumes start to hit these projected sort of numbers?
Yeah, I think it will still take time, because I think people have underestimated the complexity of building these systems, right? I think Joseph said that, yeah, the devices are there, you have stacks available, but to really make this work in a big theme of things, you need interoperability and you need simplicity, and that has been very hard, I would claim, outside the typical consumer use cases, so maybe Wi-Fi and Bluetooth Low Energy. Industrial is much more fragmented and have a long history, and that history is hard to break. So I think you really need to see those strong initiatives to create certified interoperable solutions that are easy for people to deploy at a low cost, such as, for example, Matter running on top of NR Plus. So then you can start to see some scaling. So I definitely think there will be scaling, but I think you will need another 1 to 2 years to see some of that standardization happening in consumer, spilling over to industrial and buildings to start that to maybe grow in the next couple of years.
Well, this is one of these situations where I think the technology is moving faster than the market itself, because it's my understanding that when we start talking about industry or buildings, they are very cautious and slow-moving marketplaces. So I guess this is a factor too.
The speed of adoption of wireless is very different from use case to use case. For example, if you take the smart metering, there's been a decision to definitely go wireless, and we are seeing a speed of adoption which is very high today. So just to give you an idea, Wirepas is delivering 1 million devices per month today in that market, and this is just the start. So I think once a given use case creates an ROI for the technology, then the adoption is widely accelerated. In buildings, I think the main concern is the interoperability, which is required, and the fragmentation. But as soon as you have this backbone which is interoperable, that will be a major enabler. The other element in building is that today the value of a building which is automated is much higher than a non-automated building. So it's not only the energy efficiency that is a driver, but it's also the workspace experience, which is becoming a big requirement on building owners. And you can only achieve that by automating the building. So that's also becoming a driver for adoption.
Okay. I think I can add just one thing really quickly. Yeah. So I mean, we're talking billions and billions of devices connected to wireless networks, and that is a very dense network. And up until recently, with a few exceptions, there's not been a lot of wireless standards out there that can cope with that kind of density, right? So it's, you can forecast, I don't know, 20 billion devices in the next 5 years, but without the technology that can really enable it, it's not going to happen. So we are making the right moves here. I'm not saying that there's not other technologies out there that address massive machine type connectivity, but this is really the right step for me to enable these kinds of numbers.
Well, in my work for DECT Today magazine and the YouTube channel, I talk to quite a lot of different execs from companies across a lot of different marketplaces, and all I can say is that the feedback I'm getting in relation to DECT NR Plus at the moment is very positive. So I think everybody should keep up the good work. I think this has been very useful today. I think there's lots more we could say, but we're going to run out of time. So perhaps we need to do this again soon, but for today, thank you very much, gentlemen, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.